St. Dymphna Psychiatric Care Facility looks just like any ordinary hospital. Built in the late 70s, the facade is truly unremarkable. Sparse windows freckle the brown brick almost haphazardly, as windows are only built into the offices, and there aren't many offices. However, unless you were looking for windows with the sole intent of counting them, you'd never notice that the building lacks any or that they are oddly placed. Most of the inside is just as bland, with the slight few oddities nearly unrecognizable unless you were to purposely seek out the peculiar. The facility officially closed to the public 10 years ago in 2009. There wasn't much of a reason given, and most assumed that the new upscale Lilith Ridge General Hospital would take over all psychiatric care. I had been on staff less than 6 months when I was told the hospital was planning to close. When I asked the director if I should begin to look for another job, he simply answered, "No." 4 weeks after, we discharged our last official patient. I was sure I was being kept on the payroll to help clean and organize the facility, assuming it was going to be sold. The rural location, sequestered away from the rest of the town, wasn't a prime location for a hospital. I did think that if the building was torn down, the location would make a nice country getaway destination. It was a balmy Friday morning, the day after seeing our last patient exit. Myself, 11 other nurses, and 6 nursing assistants sat quietly in the employee dining area. We slowly sipped on our lukewarm coffees, awaiting instruction. A man with a pencil-thin mustache entered the room and cleared his throat, obviously requesting the attention of the room. "Hello, all. I am Kaysen. I'll be your new..." He paused. "Manager, I suppose. Your director, Smith, is still in the facility should you need to speak to him. I will run the day-to-day workings as Smith is handling business at a higher capacity." He scanned the room with a nervous confidence, adjusting his suspenders while maintaining his bold stance. He looked as if he had stepped out of the 70s himself, an unconventional type of handsome. "You're all probably wondering why you are still employed since the hospital has closed." He fiddled with his suspender while his thin mustache twitched at the sides. "This is still to be a working psychiatric care center, just more selective. We will now exclusively serve only the most severe cases, ones that traditional hospitals are not trained or equipped to handle appropriately." He pulled small pamphlets from his right pocket. "These will explain the cases that will be treated. If you do not feel equipped to provide the level of care being asked of you, we ask that you do not return Monday morning. If you will not be returning, please see Smith to complete your exit papers. If you return Monday for work, be prepared to sign new confidentiality statements. I look forward to working with you all." Kaysen turned away and exited, giving no time for questions or comments. I returned Monday morning, only slightly surprised to see that all my coworkers had returned as well. The pamphlet was quite jarring, however. It did mention that the company would be doubling our pay. I leaned to my left, prepared to ask a coworker what she thought of the disorders outlined in the pamphlet. Before I could speak, Kaysen and Smith entered the break room. "We will be admitting our first patient today. First patient since we repurposed our mission." Kaysen turned slightly to Smith. A slight smile raised his funny little mustache. "Smith, I am glad to see your employees are as dedicated as you said." Kaysen turned back to us. "I know you are used to more staff, more floors being fully functional, but we will only take 15 patients at a time. Please, to your unit. Review the case of the patient who will be gracing us shortly. You will find that each nurse has a copy of his medical record. First drawer under the counter of the nurses' station. Aides, just follow the instructions of your nurses. Only ask questions if you must." Kaysen turned, leaving the room again without lingering for questions. "Okay, everyone." Smith beamed. This was the most energetic I had seen him. I'm sure his pay had been doubled as well. "Get to the floor, read the chart, get ready. Our patient will be here shortly." He motioned for us all to rise, so we stood and followed him to the unit. The nurses all flocked to the station, eager to read the content located in the patient record. Milton Dillinger, Capgras delusion with slight reduplicative amnesia. Age, 38. Sex, male prior. Hospitalizations, 0 victims, associated with diagnosis. 3 victims, not associated with diagnosis. 0. Chief complaint. Milton is a 38-year-old male presenting with Capgras delusion as well as behaviors that suggest slight reduplicative amnesia. Patient claims that government bodies abducted members of his family, replacing them with imposters, whom he claims wished to steal his vital organs to then sell on the black market. Patient claims that he did not want his organs to be sold, as he quite enjoys life, and was afraid that organ harvesting would ultimately end his life. Patient states that in order to prevent the harvesting of his organs, he attempted to murder his brother, Jonathan Dillinger, 41, as well as Jonathan's wife, Mariah Dillinger, 39th. Patient states that he also attempted to murder the family cat, Pickles, 8, as he believes the cat was a government recording device. It is unknown if the human victims will succumb to the injuries. The cat, Pickles, has made a full recovery and is residing at a county animal hospital. When asked about the situation, the patient told staff that he has been transported to an augmented reality, where government bodies can better control him. It is in my professional opinion that the patient be transported to Dymphna PCF, where further analysis and possible treatment may take place. At this time, we cannot confirm if patient suspicions of government interference are substantial evidence that patient was a candidate for organ farming. I was reading the final sentences as I heard the door locks, a buzz that signaled they were being opened. I looked up as they wheeled a withered, haggard man into the unit. He looked up and immediately began to scream. That was 10 years ago today. We have since treated many patients with many peculiar diagnoses. However, today we are stepping into treating disorders that are yet to be classified by the DSM or any medical publishing. Our patient arrives soon. We never get much notice when we are to expect new patients. Kason will come and sprinkle chart copies at the station. He simply says, "Our new patient is expected soon." Soon. Never enough notice, but there's not much that more notice would do anyhow. I grab the chart, flipping through with little urgency but much interest. Over the last decade, I've learned that the charts are always just a brief synopsis written by social workers and nurses who work for hospital emergency rooms. They only have the traditional diagnostic manual to rely on, so the diagnosis is always just a loose guess. These nurses and social workers aren't even aware that St. Dymphna is open. They are often told that the patient will be transferred to an alternate facility, and they send them on. I've always wondered if anyone ever questions what alternate facility the patients go to. Logistics handle our assessment and referral process. They are responsible for the transfers from the traditional hospitals to our facility. Kason and Smith don't allow questions about logistics, and we have learned not to ask. I open my copy only to have my hand nudged, urging me to pay more attention to Pickles than to my work. We adopted Pickles when we first opened. His owners had passed. The county hospital he resided at placed him for adoption, and Kason declared that Pickles would be a therapy animal and brought him to the facility. Looking back, I believe Kason wanted Pickles as a souvenir, a commemoration of our first patient. 10 years later, however, Pickles is our geriatric feline that the staff and patients spoil far too much. Finally, he is distracted by my coworker's tuna salad sandwich and leaves me to review the patient chart. Caroline Beckett, unclassified diagnosis. Relative DSM diagnosis, F06.2, psychotic disorder W-Pausch delusions due to known physiological conditions, relative diagnosis. Cotard's syndrome, age, 23, sex, female prior hospitalizations, 1, victims associated with diagnosis, self-victims not associated with diagnosis, 0. Chief complaint. Caroline is a 23-year-old female presenting with an unknown mental illness alike to Cotard's syndrome. Patient claims that she is undead, stating she passed away 3 months ago and has transitioned into an animated corpse. Suffolk County Sheriff Department was dispatched to the household of Redacted, where Caroline reported to have lived for several months. Neighbors report hearing screams and bangs, describing the event as chopping sounds, screaming, more chopping sounds. Suffolk County entered the home by force after making 3 attempts to call the patient to the door. Upon entering, officers noticed blood spatter on walls, carpets, and furniture. At this time, officers could not see nor hear the patient. Officers cleared the first floor and ascended to the second, where they encountered more blood spatter on the walls and carpet. Patient was found in the first bedroom on the left, seemingly unconscious. Upon first glance, officers did not note any bodily harm to the patient, but did in fact notice a large pool of blood where the patient was sat. When SGT redacted approached and attempted to rouse the patient, it was then that he noted the patient's right arm had been amputated just below the elbow. Emergency medical services arrived on scene to transport patient to redacted general. Patient awoke en route to ED. When asked by EMS about the apparent amputation, patient stated she could not stand the rotten stench any longer. It is in my professional opinion that the patient be transported to DIMFNA PCF, where further analysis and possible treatment may take place. At this time, we cannot confirm any suspicions of justifiable or necessary amputation, as the extremity has yet to be located. All information redacted was done so at the request of the parties involved. I closed the chart and set it aside, flicking the computer mouse so I could wake the computer. Because we don't experience many typical diagnoses, I searched for Cotard's syndrome. The engine immediately brought walking corpse syndrome as the first suggestion, with life as a zombie as the second. I closed the screen, needing no more than the few suggestions the search had given me to couple with the context clues I had already drawn from the chart. I paged for an aide to ready the patient room and began organize my workspace. I was beginning to review the medication and vital sign records when the soft taps of impatient fingers against the desktop called for my attention. Another day in paradise, I assume? Kaysen flashed a smile. It would be easy to focus on his dimples and 9 out of 10 dentists-approved smile if it wasn't for that odd, thin little mustache. Of course. Keep paying me like you do, and it'll always be paradise. I smiled back. Are you ready for our incoming patient, Ms. Caroline? Kaysen was waiting to tell me something. I could always tell when he was withholding information, building up suspense so he could bathe in my shock and awe. Truth be told, I mostly embellish my reactions. I do a lot to keep Kaysen happy, more than I should at times. I'm ready, but I feel you have more to tell me. Did I miss something in the chart? I pretended to look through the pages, hunting for information I knew wouldn't be found. You know her arm? Know how they couldn't find it? She ate it? Kaysen beamed. I dropped my jaw and overly animated my expression. I spread a mix of bewilderment and confusion across my face, hoping that the reaction was all that Kaysen hoped for. I know, he shouted. I almost fell out of my chair when logistics called. Kaysen smacked the desk. Well, all right, love. Get your report ready for the next shift. You should be off the clock, and I believe I told you that the patient should be here soon.